Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today we're going to be talking about repairing in Star Citizen and how some of you might end up doing this as an in-game career. The information that we got through the design article, which I'll link in the description, was very informative, and like with mining, it turned out to be something I'm now actually pretty interested in, which before I wouldn't have even really envisioned this being fun. Repairing in the simplest form can be looked at as swapping out components of a ship that have sustained damage. If damage is done to the hull of a ship and that's severe enough, it's going to pass that damage through to the components below it, and then potentially to the subcomponents that are then connected to that. To make sense of all of this, think of avionics as a component, and then whatever you add to that component to make it perform better would then be considered a subcomponent. We get information on the different types of subcomponents that'll be in-game, and they range in their purposes from power conduits, which are going to allow you to use less power consumption, insulators to protect components from electromagnetic radiation, and heat sinks to kind of lower the infrared signature of the ship. There's a bunch of others on the image on the screen right now, and if you want to read through all of them, go ahead. But that kind of gives you an idea of what these actually do when we start talking about subcomponents. So you just get done in a firefight, and you're there sitting there licking your wounds. But if you want to get back up to full operational speed, you need to do some repairs. In larger multi-crew ships, you're going to have different hatches to the module racks on the interior of the ship to work on. Like with the Constellation, they're on the port side of the cargo area. But in a smaller single-seat craft, most of these are going to be housed along the hull on the outside of the ship, meaning that you may actually need to land or EVA out to do field repairs, which actually sounds fun and nerve-wracking at the same time. Oh, and it's important to know that to make these repairs, you actually need to kill power to these components. Otherwise, you could get electrocuted and use one of your spaceman's lives. In very large ships, you may end up being able to utilize computers to reroute power, kind of away from where you're working instead of cutting the power altogether. But when it comes time to make these repairs, it's a simple process of removing the old part and replacing it with a new one, if you happen to have one. If we're just talking about a subcomponent, you should be able to get away with just removing it because they seem to really only be there to increase performance in some way. But if you have the spare, it's better to get it from storage and get it back to the max. I'm kind of reading into that a little bit, like saying that you can operate without a subcomponent, but that may end up not being the case. There is a certain universal nature to the components on ships, though, as long as they're in the same size class. So a coolant rod is a coolant rod if they are the same size, regardless if you pull it out of the laser of a Gladius and you end up needing to put it into the shield generator of a Hornet. I think in a more likely situation in field repairs, I think it would actually be more along the lines of pulling out an EM insulator from the weapons, on like a Constellation, and then moving that into the shields or avionics, thus keeping your most important systems up and running. Either way, don't expect a rod from a reclaimer to fit into your Aurora. In the largest of ships, there's full backup systems that are going to allow you to actually utilize computers to just divert that power. So if you can't replace the primary in time, you have a backup you can then switch it to. Ships like the Vanguard and the Sabre, where redundancy was the selling point, should also benefit from that type of action in the future too. So that's the small scale, the quick and dirty, the plug-and-play versions of what you can expect from repairs. But it gets much more involved for things like repairing hull damage. After all, you don't just tape a piece of cardboard over a pressurized gap in the wall of your ship. So, to accomplish this, there's two primary roles when it comes to repair, and that's going to be the task manager and the repair arm operator. And it should be noted that we're talking about ships that have these built in, like the Crucible. Something like the 300 isn't going to have these two roles, which is why you need repair ships around. The task manager is a combination of a supervisor and a supplier. This role starts the process by importing information about a damaged ship and getting a really good view through the augmented reality overlay that shows up as a heat map. Where there's red, things are real bad. You basically consider them fully damaged. Green means no damage, and colors in between correlate to the levels of damage taken. You're also going to see a very clearly marked line to indicate the edge of hull breaches to know where the work really needs to begin. The task manager will then utilize this information to see what types of materials are needed to actually make these repairs. And we'll get into this more in a minute, but the repair arm actually uses materials sprayed onto the surface, and then that material is mixed and calculated by the task manager. Now that the manager knows what they actually are going to end up needing, it's time to go in and create that material using the material panel. This part of the process is kind of part crafting, part supply management, and we'll use, some common sense aspects too. So you're going to have three different types of materials that you're going to combine to come up with your end product. The first of which is your base compound, and the quality of the material has a direct impact on the strength of the end result. You also have a thermal insulant, which basically gives you a wider target by giving you a wider temperature or exposure range when you're actually applying the material and using the laser. And finally, the conductive agent, which serves the purpose of making repairs happen quicker. All materials that are going to be mixed have a grade associated with them in each of these categories. So in the example on the screen, you would want to use the silicarbide tetraweave as a conductive agent since it has an A grade for that. That same material has a D grade for the base material, so it's probably not the best fit in that category. So we have our conductive material, and if you want the best and quickest repairs, you're going to want to find the highest grades that you have. So something like the TiA titanium for your base material and the tri-bonded methylium as your thermal product would be a pretty ideal setup. You don't have to choose you don't have to choose from the material inventory, though it does show you everything that you have available. You should actually formulate your end material through the part blueprint. And this is where you end up getting a real visual representation of how well and fast this process is going to go. Mix, match, and drop the materials in and see how it impacts the graph. Peak quality line is where you want to have the best result, along with the exposure time along the x-axis. You have how much time your laser actually needs to sit on the material to cure it. Too little or too much time in these kind of dashed areas that you can see on the screen, and you're probably going to have a decent patch job. Getting into the blue areas where it's going to be really strong and in the best situation, but anything outside of the dashed areas, you're looking at a failed attempt that's either going to need more lasering or you're going to end up needing to clear it off and try again based on overexposure. So ideally, you want a graph that has a blue bar that is wide and close to the left on the exposure axis. You also need to think big picture though, because you can technically get the same quality repair with using more effort on the ARM operator's behalf, with low quality materials the same as high quality. High quality basically means an easier job, low quality just means it's cheaper. The manager really needs to be aware of how much material they have on board of what types and what the cost associated with those materials are, and honestly be able to know the skill of the ARM operator and make an educated decision based on those factors. Once you've chosen how you're going to mix, you need to confirm your composition so the ARM operator can then get to work. The materials that you're using, you need to bring with you though, and you can either buy them, or if you're part of an organization, the mining material, like the mining operation of your organization, could potentially support the ore collection that can then be used and refined by your repair operation. It just kind of starts to coalesce, and we kind of get to see the beginning of how these parts are all going to intertwine together, and it's really exciting to see. If you're in a situation where it's more than, like a patch job, let's say like a wing is blown off, then you're really going to need to take advantage of the computing power of the task manager station to select the missing part from the inventory on the ship's memory. And once it's been selected, the ship control arm will then start immediately reconstructing the frame so the operator can then begin kind of building the whole surface over the top of that frame. The ARM operator plays a really important role here though, because you can't just build over some jagged surface, so using the ARM's high-powered laser, they need to clean off the edges so that process can start. The ARM itself has a couple components, such as like a high-powered laser and a sprayer, and the laser is used in several different ways and in different purposes, and the whole ARM itself is actually controlled remotely, where you can see what you're doing through a camera at the end of the ARM, and it's displayed on the ARM operator's little computer display. The stripping mode on the laser is used to clean up the damaged area, making it ready for the repairs that you're going to be doing. Basically, in the stripping mode, you're getting yourself a clean starting point so the materials can adhere well along that edge. The patching mode is where things get a little bit more complicated, because the sprayer on the ARM actually expels a fine powder that the laser then heats up to cure it in place. The ARM operator's display is going to show the information in the graphs that the task manager created, showing them how much time that they're going to need to spend in a certain spot to ensure they've got that ideal curing time. So to accomplish this, the ARM operator can toggle between an AR heat map to give them a better idea of what they're actually doing and how close they are to reaching ideal temperature and exposure thresholds, with green colors being good and turning into red if it's bad. While the task manager is more of a cerebral job than the ARM operator just requires more skill, because while the manager can make the job easier, the end result's effectiveness is going to be completely based on the job done by the operator. Bad materials can reach the same level of quality as good materials, but it just takes more work and practice to make that happen. But any way you cut it, a team working together effectively and who have practiced together could be irreplaceable in an organization. There's going to be situations where you just don't have a crucible around. And if you want or really need to do repairs on your own, you're going to want to make sure you have the personal multi-tool with you. This thing has just a pretty low powered laser, and it can't carry the high power components, so don't expect to make major repairs with this, or even really good repairs. But in a pinch, it could patch you up enough to get back to a repair shop, so you're not losing your ship completely. And that's basically it. There you have it, repairing in a nutshell, which turned out to be much more exciting than initially expected, right? So I'm going to tell you right now, if you have interest in this, if you get good, people are going to love you. Seriously, space is a dangerous place, and people are going to be shooting people constantly. So you are always going to have a job, not to mention being popular. So if you have any thoughts or questions about this, please put them in the comments. Otherwise, I appreciate you all watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.